Good morning, everyone. My name is Laika Sobrevilla, and today we are going to tackle the things about duck egg production. We are going to spend most of the class reading or discovering on the topics about duck egg production. In each topic, we will add features to this while we learn. I hope you guys can learn something at the end of this report. So, we have here our topics. First thing, we have breeding, which is the first thing we should understand in this report. We've got a lot of subtopics about this, so better listen. Next, we have housing management, feeds and feeding, processing and utilization, and of course we have here disease prevention and control, which is very important, or we should say paramount in this report. Marketing, and lastly we have farm record keeping. I would like to introduce my fellow reporters, Atihera Maria Angelica, Paagan Fitzodri, Corpus Nerissa, Estepa Angel, Sobre Peñamitas, Sobre Villa Laika, and that's me. Okay, we have your table, which shows the duck population by region. Top 5 regional duck producers. We have here regions 2, region 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Region 3 takes the lead, accounting for 23.5% of the total population. BAS 2002. Duck production by region January 1, 2002. So it was many years ago. And so let's just find the highest number there and also the smallest. And let's see the number in our region. So let's start with the highest number. So the highest number here is in Region 3 Central Luzon, which have 2,399,377, and the smallest right here is Central Visayas, Region 7, which only have 162,346, and in our region we have 402,270. Okay, all in all, Philippines have 10,225,954. That's according to Bureau of Agricultural Statistics 2002. So, the predominant type of duck used for egg production is the Pateros type of the Philippine mallard duck, which is locally known as itik. This is primarily raised for balut, 16 to 18-day old embryonated egg production, so its color is brown, which is not the typical color of a duck, because the typical color of a duck is white, and that's what we call a mallard duck or an itik in Tagalog. Okay, so Philippine mallard duck is very well adapted to local environmental conditions and management practices as well. These ducks are non-sitters and are good producers of eggs that are relatively large in size. Duck eggs contributed 27,480 tons in total egg production. Duck raising is inexpensive, requires non-elaborate housing facilities and little attention and less space for breeding compared to chickens. Moreover, ducks are shown to be relatively hardy, resistant to common avian diseases, and subsist on a variety of feeds. So if you want to make a business, it's really that good to have this kind of a business, since these ethics are really that easy to pet, not like any other avians, and also like what is said here, they are resistant to any common avian diseases. So that's for the introduction, and I hope you guys to listen to the next reporters.
Breeding. Most of the domestic ducks raised in the Philippines today are descendants of stocks introduced in the country many years ago. The Philippine mallard duck, or Anas paterinchos, which is also called the Pateros duck, was developed from the stocks brought by Chinese merchants in the early 19th century. Through the processes of natural and artificial selection, they have evolved themselves into an egg-type genetic group which are adapted to local environmental conditions. Physical characteristics of the Philippine mallard duck. The original Pateros duck has black plumage with white bib on the neck. However, with the introduction of any indiscriminate mating with foreign breeds such as Indian runner and khaki campbell, it has resulted in several plumage colors and patterns. The predominant colors are black for the Pateros type on the right picture and brown for the khaki type on the left picture. Performance. The Philippine mallard ducks are raised under various management conditions. Under the traditional system, ducks are raised under herding system or semi-confinement and fed with traditional feeds such as snails, a source of protein, and pali, a source of energy. Under this management system, average annual egg production ranges from 40% to 60%. Mortality of ducks during the brooding and growing or rearing period is usually high. Complete confinement. The Philippine mallard duck can be raised under complete confinement during the brooding, growing, and laying periods. Under this system, mortality during the growing or rearing period is lesser compared to when they are raised under herding system. If ducks will be fed with commercial feeds, average egg production will range from 65% to 75%. Livability of ducks is estimated to about 90% during the brooding, 90% during the growing or rearing, and about 20% during the laying periods. The average egg weight is about 60 grams. Production of replacement stocks. Selection of stocks. The actual performance of ducks is primarily determined by their genetic type or genetic makeup and the environment to where they are exposed. Many traits of economic importance are passed on from parent to offspring. The following points are worth considering in the selection of breeder stock stories. First is the sound body conformation. Do not include ducks and drakes with body deformities and abnormalities, such as crooked keelbone or back, broken wings and legs, blind, deformed bill, etc. Second is the plumage color and pattern. If considering the Philippine mallard duck, select ducks with black, the Pateros type, and brown, the khaki type plumage. If using other breeds, use plumage color conforming to the breed standards. Egg production performance. Obtain replacement stocks from flocks which produce good and large eggs. Sex ratio and mating system. High percentage fertility is very important for both balut and duckling production. Only eggs coming from male or mated flocks are considered for balut and duckling production. Infertile eggs are sold as stable eggs or are processed into solid eggs or century eggs. To, ensure, to ensure high percentage of fertility, consider the following tips. Place one healthy and sexually aggressive drake for every 7 to 10 females. Too many females assigned to each drake could result to lower fertility, and too many drakes can lead to frequent fighting resulting to lower fertility. If extra drakes to replace those that will show mating ability problems or that will die during the breeding period. Drakes younger than ducks by 2 months are ideal as spikers. Provide ponds for swimming to enhance mating. Management of replacement breeder stocks. Ducks and drakes which are grown properly show good performance during the laying period. To ensure high egg production and fertility, consider the following. Provide good quality feeds and adequate feeding and drinking spaces to the breeder stocks during the growing period. Good feeds and feeding system will result to uniform body size. Uniform body size results to uniform onset of lay and egg size. Do not force the ducks to lay eggs earlier than 22 weeks old. Early laying results to many small eggs which are not suited for balut production. Provide adequate space during the growing period. Provide 13 hours of daylight until the ducks are sexually mature. Grow the males and the females separately. Mix the male with the females 2 to 4 weeks before the expected onset of lay. Care and handling of hatching eggs. Proper care and handling of eggs is important for good hatchability of eggs. Follow the tips for proper care and handling to hatching eggs. Wash hands thoroughly. Gather eggs at 6 a.m. and make a second collection at about 7 a.m. Place eggs in clean trays or baskets. Separate cracked, off-shape, off-size, and heavily soiled eggs from the good quality eggs. Fumigate eggs immediately after collection and before incubation. Store eggs in a relatively cool and dry place. Store hatching eggs with mat up or tip down. Turn eggs at least once a day if hatching eggs will be stored for more than 1 week. Incubation and hatchery management. Egg-type mallard ducks have lost their broodiness characteristic. To produce balut or duckling, artificial incubation of their hatching eggs is needed. Artificial incubators differ in design, size, fuel requirements, and other features, but the important factors needed in incubation, such as temperature, relative humidity, ventilation, and turning, are basically similar. To incubate mallard duck eggs, the following artificial incubation methods can be used. First is the traditional pasteurized method, or commonly called the balutan or tuong method. Second is the stir air or the electric force draft type. A typical balutan is a low building made up of bamboo, nipa walls, and galvanized iron roof. To control the ventilation inside, it should be constructed with small windows and door. For the excess moisture to be absorbed, rice hulls and sawdust should be spread on the floor. In duckling production, artificial incubation is needed to imitate the broody mother hen, since smaller ducks have lost the broodiness characteristic. In a hatchery, eggs are set in an incubator for 28 days until these are hatched. These are automatically or manually turned while in the incubator.
Candling and fertility determination. Candling is the process of determining the quality and fertility of eggs with the use of candling box. To determine quality, candling should be done before the eggs are incubated. Candling of eggs is done at 10 to 12 days of incubation. The percentage fertility is the ratio of the number of fertile eggs to the total number of eggs set and can be multiplied by 100. The infertile eggs and dead embryos can be detected during candling, and it can be removed from the incubators and sold as Pinoy or eggs with the dead embryos. This will lighten the load of the incubators and allow the utilization of the rejected eggs. The percent fertility should be more than 80% to be considered satisfactory. Handling of ducklings. The newly hatched ducklings shall be handled with great care. Hold them by the neck rather than by the legs. Identifying their genders can be done by slightly pressing the base of the tail with the middle finger. If a small knob-like projection of about half the size of pinhead comes out, then the duckling is a male. The duckling is a female if no projection appears. Hatchery waste disposal and utilization. In a duck hatchery or balutan, the primary product is balut in day-old ducklings. The infertile eggs and pinoy are likewise used as food. In some areas of the country, the fully or partially developed embryos that were either partly hatched or unhatched are processed and utilized by pigs for feeds. Cooling. Constant cooling of non-productive ducks should be done throughout the laying period. Cooling is done to get rid of defects, abnormalities, injuries, and other ailments observed in the farm. Ducks that reach 18 months to 2 years of age and no longer lay eggs should be cooled and replaced by a new set of layers. These cooled ducks are sold as cools. They can be slaughtered and cooked into various dishes. Housing management, location of the farms. Ducks can be raised in areas near bodies of water or in areas where there are rice fields to feed on after harvest. The ideal site for a duck farm is in areas relatively far from human settlements considering the noise ducks create and waste which produce unpleasant odor. These consequences are not acceptable to non-duck raisers. In choosing a duck farm site, considering the following characteristics: well-ventilated and well-drained farm with a good drainage system, accessibility to market, and accessibility to supply of feeds and water, and the availability of electricity.
It's me again, like a Subribilia, and we have here duck egg production, and we have here housing management. So there's dozens of duck on the picture. So location of the farm. Ideal site for a duck farm is in areas relatively far from human settlements considering the noise ducks create and waste which produce unpleasant odor. So ducks should be away from people to avoid stress among them. They also feel stress as well as people do, and their feces are really that unpleasant in odor. So they are really needed to be far from humans, of course. And we have here following characteristics. A. Well-ventilated and well-drained farm with good drainage system. So why is it that ventilation system in a farm or poultry is that important? This is economically important since it reduces production and labor costs. Ventilation air removes excessive moisture, dust, and odors from the building and at the same time dilutes airborne disease organisms. Ventilation in a poultry house supplies fresh air that is essential to sustain life. It also helps reduce the extremes of temperature, humidity, and air contamination to tolerable limits for confined chickens. Improved ventilation systems have also made possible high-density populations of livestock and poultry in confinement, thus reducing the building cost per unit house. And next thing we have here B, accessibility to market. Okay, so the more you are near to the market, the more that your business is more profitable. And last but not the least is the accessibility to supply of feeds and water and availability of electricity. Well, that's a fundamental needs, of course, of the ducks in order to live. So another picture of a duck in a duck house. So this duck house is really that ideal if you're raising a lot of ducks. You can see in the picture that there's a lot of space over there. And let's proceed. Okay, so duck house. A rectangular house is better than a square one because it has a wider space for feeders and waterers. Also, cleanliness and brightness of the floor and nesting areas could be easily maintained. So this is what I'm talking about. A rectangular space for ducks is necessary, and the floor must be that dry. So it is needed to be dried. If the floor is not moistured, microbes might live in it and cause diseases to the ducks. So we have here care and management. We have two types of this: traditional system and confinement. As we say, traditional system, they do the same thing as what is done before. Let's say this is the standard way of petting a duck based on or in accordance with what is generally done. So usually traditional system is done in our own houses, and confinement system is usually done in poultry businesses. Usually, but not always. Okay, so I made here a table which shows the difference and the similarities of both of these systems. So we have here in the first box, we have in traditional system, raise ducklings in an enclosed pen in a litter type house until 4 weeks of age. In confinement system, they raise them in a brooder house for 1 month. Well, they're exactly the same. Okay, in the second box, in traditional, evenly spread the litter floor with sand covered with 7.62 cm thick rice hull or rice straw. In confinement, in this portion, you really need to exert financial needs, since it will take you, it will lead you to buy like type of litter floors, and also to buy a concrete or make a concrete floor, unlike traditional system that you will only need a rice hull or rice straw. In the third bags, in traditional, provide the ducklings, especially at night, with outside heat through a 100-watt bulb for every 100 ducklings for a month. In confinement, artificial light must be provided continuously until 2 to 3 weeks of breeding. Well, they're exactly the same. It's just the traditional system has its specificity, which tells that 100-watt bulb is needed for every 100 ducklings. Okay, so let's proceed on the fourth box. And so we have here, after a month of confinement, young ducks are gradually trained to go around the field. In confinement, ducklings are then released outside the brooder house to cope with the environment. Well, again, they're the same. Okay, so let's proceed to the next box. Ducklings are pastured until they reach the age of 5 months. In confinement, transfer ducks to the grower layer house. Raise these ducks up to 1.5 years or up to the second laying year. Okay, that portion, they're actually different from each other. Okay, so in the fifth box, at 5 months or when they start laying eggs, ducks are kept in confinement throughout the laying period. In confinement during the laying period, ducks need 14 hours a day length to produce eggs efficiently. Artificial light should be provided. So there's the difference when they are already in their laying period. So in confinement system, they literally use again artificial light to produce heat, of course. So this is basically the picture of both traditional and confinement system. In the left picture, we have here the traditional system, in which you can see that they use just foods, just raw materials, or what I mean is that they just necessarily use the things around them, like that, like the barrel on the left picture. Okay, so in the On the right picture, we have the confinement system, in which the house is made up of concrete. Next thing, we have here features of an egg-type egg production. Floor space provide an ideal space of 0.23 meter square per duck to prevent overcrowding. Overcrowding of ducks, especially during hot weather, is stressful and may result to mortality. For 200 ducks, a 50-meter squared house is needed. The duck house could be 10 meters long and 5 meters wide, or it could be 8 meters long and 6 meters wide. And next thing, we have roof. Use galvanized iron as roofing material. The eave should be 3 meter or higher and should be reasonably steep for proper air circulation. And next thing, we have the floor. Use the liter slatted floor combination. Clean and dry the liter floor to minimize the occurrence of parasitism and diseases among ducks. Okay, so it is a system most commonly found in semi-commercial and commercial duck farms. The elevated slide flooring is rarely used due to high cost of construction materials. Though it costs that high, but on the other hand, it would be very helpful. And next we have 4. Side enclosures. Enclose the perimeter of the duck house with open air slidings to allow free flow of air inside and outside the duck house. So this is very much necessary in, of course, all duck houses to allow free flow of air, of course. Next slide, we have here feeds and feeding. The Philippine mallard duck is normally less efficient in converting feeds into eggs compared to other breeds of duck. On the other hand, the Philippine mallard ducks have a good appetite and are not selective on the kind of feeds that they eat. So again, we have here two kinds, the traditional system again and the confinement system. So we already elaborated what's the difference between traditional and confinement, and I hope that you listened a while back. So let's just proceed. And again, I made here a box. Okay, in the first box, we have ducks at starter age 0 to 2 weeks are fed with rice porridge or lugaw in Tagalog, supplemented with chopped trash, fish, or shrimps. In confinement, ducks are raised under complete confinement and fed with commercial feeds in the form of mush, crumbles, and pelleted feeds. Again, you really need to exert money in confinement system. Okay, and in the next box we have in traditional. During the early breeding period, ducklings are fed with porridge and marsh feeds, crumbles, or pelleted feeds are also given, but they are actually the same. Well, they are actually quite the same with confinement system in this portion. So let's go with confinement system in the second box. In feeding with commercial feeds to ducklings, use duck starter mash or broiler starter mash when duck starter feed is not available. Third box, during the growing and developing stages 3 to 20 weeks, ducks are allowed to go out to pasture and graze on newly harvested rice fields without any supplementation. In confinement, fed with commercial pellet according to proteins needed by the ducklings. So in confinement system, in this portion, they really need to consider the things that will be eaten by the ducks. So they have a plan on what they are going to feed them to ensure their productivity, of course, and their health. And in the last box in traditional, when ducks are ready to lay, ducks are fed with palay and fresh snails, commonly known as buoles or Vivipara angularis, and sometimes supplemented with commercial feeds. In confinement during the laying period, feed ducks with duck. They feed ducks with duck litter pellets. So they need to feed these ducks with pellet again, but they ensure that these pellet are that nutritious or has a higher protein, of course. So we have here table which is recommended nutrient levels in feeds of egg type ducks. So these are actually done by confinement system. They really consider the contents of the feeds that are being eaten by the dogs. So we have here energy, crude protein, calcium, phosphorus, sodium, fat, and crude fiber. Next here, amino acids, of course, vitamin supplementation. I'm just letting you guys see these portions of numbers right here. Okay, so in amino acids we have lysine, methionine, and in vitamin supplementation we have vitamin A, vitamin D3, vitamin E, vitamin K, thiamine, riboflavin, pantothenic acid, pyridoxine, folic acid, niacin, biotin, vitamin B12, and of course choline. And mineral supplementation, which are iron, copper, iodine, manganese, and zinc. So that's according from Filson 1996. And in table 4 we have nutrient composition of layer palette. So again they differ in numbers. Okay, in pre-layer which only have 18.0 in protein, but in layer breeder it's also 18.0. But okay, so look at the differences. And next thing we have table 5, daily feed intake from day old up to the end of laying period. So again, they are growing larger, they have this thing that they also need to increase their feeding routine, of course, the amount that they are eating, so that it will fit on their body. So that it will be suitable or absorbed by their body for the better health. So this is again the difference of confinement and of course traditional. In the left is traditional and in the right is confinement. Okay, so in the left picture, as you can see, they are eating a rice porridge, and in the right picture they are eating a pellet, of course. Okay, so you can see now the difference between traditional and confinement system. So that's all. Thank you for listening.
So we have here the processing and utilization. When we say processing, this is subjecting something to a series of actions in order to achieve a particular result. While in utilization, it is the act of effective using of something. So here, we are going to tackle about the processing and the utilization of the duck eggs. And to further understand this section, let's proceed to the next slide. So we have here the duck industry. When we say industry, this is related to the word production. Since there is an increase in the duck egg demand, particularly in the Philippines, they had considered it as the most important product in the duck industry. When there is a higher demand, then there will also be an increase in the production. Next, we have the duck eggs. We have mentioned earlier that the duck eggs are the most important product in duck industry. So why? Why does duck eggs become the most important product in the duck industry? Why not their meat? So here you can see the things that proves that duck eggs are important. Compared to chicken eggs, duck eggs are more nutritious. Duck eggs are also larger than in chicken eggs. And of course, duck eggs are utilized not just simply to become an egg, but it is also being processed into a balot, penoy, red salted egg, or what we call the itlog maalat, century egg, or it can also be used as a table egg and used as a component for baking purposes. So, see, beyond our imagination, duck eggs are so essential, not just in the duck industry, but most especially in our health. Next, we have here a table which shows the nutrient composition of duck eggs and its byproduct. So if we are going to calculate or compute for the total amount of nutrient content of each duck eggs byproduct, we will have a total of 183.23 nutrient composition for fresh duck egg, 920.21 in balot, 1051.23 in penoy, 573.61 in salted egg, and 692.4 in century egg. In short, the most nutritious duck egg product is the penoy, followed by balot, century egg, and the least nutritious duck egg is the fresh duck egg. But whatever duck egg byproduct you are willing to take in, it is still nutritious and delicious. Next, okay, you know in duck eggs there is no unused or what we call as the non-profitable in terms of the duck egg because whatever type of duck egg it is, whether it is thin or thick, whether it is cracked or not, it is still profitable because we or they can still use it as a table egg. They can still sold it in the market and at the same time they could still make use of it as a component for bakery purposes. Okay, next, we have here the images of the most popular duck egg products which includes the balot, penoy, red salted egg, and the century egg. So let's start with the balot. Balot is a popular food commonly sold by the street vendors in the Philippines. It is a fertilized duck egg boiled and eaten in the shell while it is warm. It is incubated for approximately 16 to 18 days and it should not be older than 2 to 3 days. So there are two kinds of balot. We have the balot saputi and balot mamatong. As you can see in the picture, balot saputi have a smaller embryo, while in balot mamatong have a bigger and identified one. Balot saputi was incubated for 17 to 18 days, whereas in balot mamatong, it was incubated for 14 to 16 days. So here are the steps in making a balot. First, preheat eggs for 3 to 5 hours under the sun, and then heat some palay in an iron cauldron or kawa until it reaches a temperature of about 42 degrees to 42.5 degrees Celsius, and then place 100 to 110 eggs in big kerchief called tikbo, made of either abaca or nylon measuring 0.37 meters squared, and then place a bag of heated palay in the bottom of cylindrical bamboo incubator basket called tuong before putting the first bag of eggs. Alternate the bag of eggs with the bags of heated palay, and then cover with sacks to conserve heat. After that, turn the eggs 2 to 3 times a day. Then, heat the palay in the morning and in the afternoon during cool days. Next, candle the eggs on the 11th and 17th days to identify infertile eggs. Day 1, dead embryo on first candling, and D2, dead embryo on second candling. The infertile eggs during the first and second candlings are removed, hard-boiled, and sold as penoy. Lastly, eggs with normal embryo on the 16th to 18th days should be hard-boiled for 20 to 30 minutes and sold as balot. Next is penoy. Duck eggs that are not properly developed after 9 to 12 days are sold as penoy, which look, smell, and taste similar to hard-boiled egg. In Filipino cuisine, these are occasionally beaten and fried, similar to scrambled eggs, and served with vinegar dip. Penoy is an infertile egg or with dead embryo. Similar to balot, penoy is also boiled for 20 to 30 minutes, but it is cheaper than that of the balot. Here are the two types of penoy, which is classified into penoy na tuyo and penoy na may sabaw o hihigupin. As shown in this slide, you can easily identify and differentiate what's the difference between penoy na tuyo or dry penoy and the penoy na may sabaw o hihigupin or penoy with broth. Next, we have here the other duck egg product. Beginning with the red salted egg, which is commonly known in Tagalog as the itlog maalat or itlog na pula. Red salted eggs are preserved eggs soaked in brine or packed in a thick layer of salted charcoal paste. Duck eggs having thick or thin shells can still be used and preserved as a red salted egg as long as it has no crack. On the other side or on the right side, you can see a sample image of a red salted egg, which are usually dyed in red or more likely a dark fuchsia. The egg white has a sharp, salty taste, and the yolk is rich and fatty. Next are the procedure in making red salted eggs. First, wash the eggs with soap and water. Next, prepare a mixture of salt, clay, and water. Add 3 canfuls of salt to half part of clay. Add water gradually until it becomes sticky. And then coat eggs with clay salt mixture and store at room temperature for 18 days in a plastic, glass, or earthen container. And then after the curing period, wash and boil the eggs under low fire for 6 to 7 hours. This is done to obtain good quality salted eggs, which is oily or viscous. And then lastly, dip the salted eggs in hot fuchsia crystal solution or grana or red dye with a ratio of 4 cups water to 1/4 teaspoon dye. Lastly, we have the century egg. Century egg is also known as preserved egg, 100-year egg, 1,000-year egg, millennium egg, skin egg, or black egg. It is a Chinese delicacy which also served as an appetizer. Through the process, the yolk becomes a dark green to gray color with a creamy consistency and strong flavor due to the hydrogen sulfide and ammonia present, while the white becomes a dark brown, translucent jelly with a salty flavor. Water, salt, sodium hydroxide, ferric oxide, copper sulfate, lead oxide, tannin, or black tea are the ingredients used in making a century egg. Next is the procedure in making a century egg. First, dissolve salt and sodium hydroxide in water. Add ferric oxide, copper sulfate, lead oxide, and tannin or black tea. Stir thoroughly. And then soak the eggs into the solution for 4 weeks. Be sure to keep the solution in 28 degrees Celsius room temperature. If there is no temperature controlling room, increase the soaking period to 15 days in hot climate or 28 to 30 days in cold climate. Avoid sudden change in temperature. Rinse the treated eggs and then allow them to dry naturally. Then finally, coat with polyvinyl acetate or some other non-ventilated packaging material. An alternative is to add red soil to the saline solution after the treated eggs are removed. Coat the eggs with the mud and roll them in rice hulls. Then age them for about 2 weeks. After curing, the white of the egg will have a grayish, translucent color and a gelatinous texture. And the yolk, when sliced, will have a grayish green color.
Prevention and control disease. Ducks have higher resistance to disease than chicken and other animals. Keeping ducks healthy requires taking the required precaution to avoid disease outbreak in the first place, as well as giving adequate treatment to reduce mortality and morbidity in the event that they do get infected. Useful tips in preventing duck diseases. Keep duck of the same age in the same pen to avoid overcrowding. Diseases are more likely in dogs who consume unbalanced rations. Sick duck should be called immediately and disposed of properly. Maintain a close eye on the overall duck farm operation and maintain the farm and surrounding clean. Prevent dog cats, rats, snakes, and other predators from entering a structure before they are harmed by ravenous creatures. In bacterial disease, we have duck cholera, direct contact, intake of infected feed and drinking water, and blood-sucking insect can all spread duck cholera. Symptoms include lack of appetite, mucus discharge from the mouth, diarrhea, and difficulty breathing in the breathing ducts. Hemorrhages on the heart muscle, spleen, and belly fat have all been discovered in the deceased bird. The liver is swollen, copper-colored, and friable, easily crumpled. Clinical signs. It is classified into four groups. Dengue is the most acute form of the disease. The duck may die suddenly, assuming a ventrally recumbent position with extended head, open eyes in a staring manner, and open mouth. Some dead dogs may appear like statues, and only close scrutiny will reveal that they are dead. Mortality ranges from 70 to 90%. Second, we have DAPA. It's characterized by egg-laying posture with lowering head and neck, depression, and loss of appetite. The mortality rate is lower than that of dengue, although morbidity can exceed 90%. Third, we have Tuyo. It's characterized by an egg-laying posture, although the mortality rate is lower than that of dengue. Morbidity can exceed 90%. Sick ducks, even if driven away, do not leave the watering basin. Vents are frequently coated with excrement and debris. Lastly, we have buto buto is a chronic type of duck cholera that is defined by stiff swelling of the leg joint. Malnutrition and dehydration progress, as did fatigue, low appetite, and ruffled production of light feathers. It may last for a long time. Next, we have treatment and prevention. Treatment. High-dose antibiotics and sulfa medication can be used to treat it. Prevention. Generally, health is not a problem in dogs because they are highly resistant to common avian diseases compared to chickens. Moreover, there are no existing documents suggesting show the incidence of particular illnesses. Other confinement management, vitamin, mineral, or anti-stress supplementation is given only during the rainy season or during extreme weather conditions. This supplementation is given through the drinking water in a separate drinking through for 2 weeks.
Marketing and farm record keeping. The objective of this topic is for you to understand the major marketing channels, important terminologies, and significance of farm record keeping. Also, you will learn some tips in marketing duck eggs. Before I'll explain the marketing channels in duck egg production, I would like to clarify some terminologies that will definitely help you in understanding this topic. Let's start from marketing. Marketing refers to activities a company undertakes to promote the buying or selling of a product or service. Marketing includes advertising, selling, and delivering products to consumers or other businesses. If you want to be successful in commerce, it's essential that you understand the differences between wholesale and retail. The primary difference of wholesale and retail is that wholesalers buy bulk goods from manufacturers or distributors and store them. Then they sell them to retailers in smaller quantities while retailers buy smaller amounts of bulk goods from wholesalers or distributors.
Then they sell them directly to the end user. That's the keyword for retailers, end user. In other words, retailers are the last business in the supply chain, selling directly to consumers. So whenever you buy something for your own use as a consumer, you're buying from a retailer. This includes the grocery store, hardware store, and clothes shop. You might be wondering, how do wholesalers make a profit? For example, a wholesaler might buy 1,000 water bottles from a manufacturer for 10 pesos per bottle. This would cost them 10,000 pesos. Then the wholesaler could sell 50 water bottles to different retailers for 20 pesos per bottle, twice the price they originally bought each bottle for. So wholesalers resell the products to other businesses in smaller quantities and at a higher cost than they bought them. My example is a bit exaggerated, but I think you get my point. Once they deduct their expenses such as warehousing and delivery, they'd be left with a profit. To be fair, I will also give an example to retail. Let's say that the retailer bought 100 watches from a wholesaler for 100 pesos each. Then they could sell them to consumers for 200 pesos each. There are four major marketing channels used in marketing duck eggs. So, number one, first, from the producer to assembler wholesaler to retailer and then to the consumer. This type of outlet involves the assembling of duck eggs in the producer's area, and the eggs are later sold to retailers in the market. Assembling means buying necessary component parts and to fit them together to make a product. The assembler wholesaler means that the wholesaler physically assemble, sort, and grade goods in large lots, break bulk, repack, and redistribute in smaller lots. Number two, from the producer to assembler wholesaler to balut operator and to the retailer, then to the consumer. The assembler wholesaler sells the eggs to the balut operator, and the balut is retailed by the vendor to the consumer. The balut operator or company that engages in or runs a balut business. Number three is the producer to balut operator, to retailer, and to the consumer. In some instances, the balut operator directly gets duck eggs from the producers and sells to the retailer or vendor. Number four, producer to assembler wholesaler. For example of the product is the century or salted eggs, and then to the wholesaler or retailer, to retailer, and then consumer. The assembler wholesaler engages in century and salted egg production and sells them to the wholesaler or retailer, then to the consumer. In some cases, eggs are sold to institutional buyers like hotel, restaurants, hospitals, etc. As I have said earlier, the assembler wholesaler means that they physically assemble, sort, and grade goods in large lots, break bulk, repack, and redistribute in smaller lots. This figure is the flowchart of four major marketing channels. It can help you to understand them better. These are some tips in marketing duck eggs. To ensure an effective marketing scheme, conduct a survey of favorable outlets prior to production. Establish marketing contacts as much as possible. So basically, you have to find the connection to producers or manufacturers that have quality product. Form an association or cooperative to determine the optimum price, thus avail of a better price for eggs. Mutual agreement in prices between producers is important to avoid conflicts like losing customers because of high prices. Grade or classify the eggs according to size. Different sizes and grades command varying prices. The bigger size of egg means higher price. Clean the eggs before selling them to the consumers because cleanliness attracts consumers. To minimize losses due to breakage, improve the handling and transport of eggs. Be careful in transporting eggs to avoid loss of income. Let's go to farm record keeping. Farmers are encouraged to keep records because records increases efficiency by providing a basis in deciding what resources to use and how to use them. They are vital tools for planning and budgeting since they give the information on the financial and physical aspects of the business operation. They facilitate evaluation of the enterprise. They show the financial status of the enterprise. They help in adjusting production plans through its market results and production costs and returns. They facilitate preparation of income tax returns. Tax returns allow taxpayers to calculate their tax liability, schedule tax payments, or request refunds for the overpayment of taxes. In most countries, tax returns must be filed annually. For an individual or business with reportable income, including wages, interest, dividends, capital gains, and other profits. And the last one, they show one's capacity to avail of loans from financing institutions. There are types of records: the physical records and financial records. Under physical records is the brooding and growing record and laying record. Financial records include all the monetary sources considering the physical records. These records can be classified into expenses and income. So in physical records, under the brooding and growing record includes information on the duckling number, date started, daily feed, daily feed consumption, daily inventory, cost of stock, cost of housing, cost of equipment, date hatch, mortality and calls, medicines, vaccines and supplements use, number of stock sold, and management practices applied. Under the laying record, it details the number of laying ducks, daily egg production, egg grades, daily feed consumption, culls and mortality, management scheme implemented, medicines and vaccines given, and flock replacement. In financial records, under expenses, it includes costs of construction, equipment, stocks, feed, medicine, vaccine, supplement, labor, electricity, water, maintenance, and miscellaneous items. Under income, it includes sale of eggs, culls, and feed bags. These are some examples of records. The layout is up to you as long as the information or record needed is present. This is an example of vaccination record. And this is for the treatments, etc. Individual cow record, broiler production card. It includes the date, flock, number brooded, death on arrival, day old weight, attendant, house number, date in days, age in weeks, mortality, calls, temperature, feeds, vaccines, weight, standard weight using pellets, and this is the record of fish. And this template is an example for annual cash expense budget of a poultry farm and annual cash income budget. It includes the annual cash flow of a poultry farm.